So, um, it's been a long, confusing day as I've kind of wrestled back and forth with a seeming contradiction between the people who are saying, look, we have to get out there and expose the false teachings and the false teachers. And what I said, which is, no, we've been defiled by a root of bitterness, and we have to focus on Christ, because that's what the enemy wants to do, is completely upset our focus on Christ, and spoil the fellowship, because there's so much confusion going on as people are going into discernment mode, and in some cases have not grown sufficiently in their knowledge of the word to know up or down or right or left. And so they're just pointing fingers every direction, going, what about this, and what about that person, and what about that person? And and people are getting accused who are not, they're grace people. And it's causing problems, But when I listen to, for example, Patrick L., I feel like, yeah, right on. He's saying we need to stand up and expose. Now is the time, And I've never heard him speak that clearly and strongly. And I respect him, and I agreed while I was listening to it. And yet I've been given a different sense. So what's the problem with that? There isn't a problem with that. We have to realize that we have different gifts and different approaches and different functions. And, look at Ephesus. Paul told them, look, I told you night and day the wolves are coming. They're going to devour you. People from your own midst, they're not going to spare the flock. They're going to rise up and devour you. I told you 3 years weeping, and now I'm innocent of your blood, You've got to watch it now. So, rightfully, they became very vigilant. But then when Jesus wrote the letter through John to Ephesus, what had happened? They had gotten into such a weeding out the false apostles mode and hating the deeds of the Nicolaitans that it made their heart cold, and they were in danger of losing their first love. It was making their heart sick. Okay? So then we see, as John, who wrote that letter for Jesus, was released from Patmos, he was sent to Ephesus, where he brought them the 3 letters, or he wrote the 3 letters there, and his gospel, which is concerned with what? That which is from the beginning. That phrase, that which was from the beginning, is really the encapsulating statement of John's ministry, and some call it a mending ministry, to come back and mend the nets that had been broken through all the confusion, because it's like Paul was fighting, and everybody's hearts were sick, and yet he had to fight. That struggle had to be documented so that we could have clear teaching. But then John came to nourish the saints, to bring them back to the beginning, to bring them back to their first love, and to reveal the Christ, who is not just a doctrinal Christ, but a Christ for your satisfaction and your enjoyment. And every item that Christ is revealed as in John's gospel is for you to subjectively enter in an enjoyment of God, with Christ as the center in your spirit, as a fountain of living water, right? Well, so both are needed. And what are you going to say? Here's the thing. Patrick is saying we need to expose these people. We need to speak very strongly about it. And I'm saying we've all been distracted by this. We need to get our eyes back on Christ. Seems like a contradiction, but actually Paul told them they needed to discern, and John told them they needed to come back to their first love. what are you going to do? We have different functions and different gifts. And not only that, but different audiences. I mean, Patrick and my channels overlap in terms of some of our subscribers, but the people who listen to my stuff may be hungry and in a different place than the people he's ministering to. And we don't have to have, we can have a diversity of views on some of these subjects. We don't have to walk lockstep. You know, Paul and Barnabas separated, but came back together. And that was probably a move of the Spirit, even though it seemed like a disagreement. I'm not saying that Patrick and I have a disagreement. I'm just saying, look, we are seemingly saying two different, very, very different things. There is a time to expose, and there is a role for the ones who expose, and they need to have a certain maturity, and they need to have a certain amount of light, and a certain amount of experience, and a very clear conscience. And there's also the role for those who need to be ministering the food to settle people's hearts and strengthen them with Christ. Because if you're not strong in Christ and nourished with Him, you're not going to be able to discern for yourself. You're just going to have to listen to teachers who say, don't listen to that person, don't listen to this person, you know. But see, the thing is the exposing is going to go on and on and on. The July 17th thing wasn't anything new. And they've gone on to the next date, and there will be a whole other stuff beyond that. It's going to get worse and worse until Antichrist is revealed. That mystery of lawlessness is working. And you can go on infinitely exposing. And some people won't even know what you're talking about because they're not even aware of what you're, you know. So you still have to be dispensing the food. And yet there is a crucial role for people to rise up in the face of false teaching and expose it for what it is and name names. All of that is true. So am I seeking to balance the two? Maybe. You know, I want to be in agreement and have harmony, but I also need to respect the fact that God has a diversity of gifts in the body. And we need to give each other space and not expect other watchmen to be telling everybody the same thing we are telling. Because in the end, we are all speaking the same Christ and speaking the words of grace. Okay? Patrick's ministry and Saved by Grace's ministry right now is focused very much on exposing. That's fine. And I have too. And yet, for my audience, I feel led to focus on that which we heard from the beginning. Christ as our enjoyment. Come and rest. You know, if you have a call to go out and fight and engage, that's fine, but there need to be some at home taking care of the lampstand in a way, you know. And I guess that's it, you know. The Ephesus was supposed to be fighting, but it did make them sick. And so God had an answer, which was the ministry of John, to bring them the tree of life, Christ Himself, for their food, to nourish them back to health, so that they could continue the fight. So, all right, I'll talk to you guys later.